from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Wild weekend weather leaves fields underwater and winter wheat damaged. Plus, the hog industry is expanding. We'll look at a new facility slated to come online in 2017. In agribusiness, caution for cattle markets.
But one thing you really have to be mindful of is that the fund position right now is extremely long.
The deadline arrives for dairy producers in Wisconsin and Minnesota dropped by Grassland Dairy. Did they find a new home? And could farming be the next big city career?
Agday, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Farmers from the Mid-South to the Great Plains are counting their losses and making plans to replant after a frenetic weekend storm brought deadly flooding on one end of the spectrum to double-digit snow to the other. Heavy, wet snow socked western Kansas over the weekend with as much as 20 inches of snow in some locations. Wheat was tillering and stems have snapped under the weight. The market responded with 20-cent gains, increases we haven't seen in months. Some farmers we talked with say the wheat crop in the western quarter of the state is gone.
Thanks, Clinton. The amazing thing about this is how heavy and wet the snow was. When you look at rainfall amounts and melted snow amounts, this is a rainfall equivalent of it. You see western Kansas, that's 3 to 5 inches of liquid. Some of that was rain, but the rest of it was just a heavy, sloppy, wet snow, which has caused all the problems and something you don't see very often this time of the year. We'll be back with your forecast in a little while.
Coincidentally, the annual Kansas Wheat Tour is scheduled to begin this morning in Manhattan, Kansas, where scouts will gauge the hard red winter wheat crop prior to harvest. Betsy Gibbon looks at the snowfall impact.
Whiteout conditions moving through the heart of the wheat belt over the weekend. Heavy snow cover stacked up on fields in southwest Kansas and snapping stems over. Farmers wondering if fully headed out wheat will produce any grain. Farmers in the area say it may be a couple of days before they can assess the fields. The Kansas Wheat Commission saying a combination of below freezing temperatures for multiple nights and heavy snow is devastating to the wheat crop.
This is something that none of us have ever seen before. Some of the wheat that got close to 20 inches of snow on top of it was maybe 5 weeks away from harvest. It'd be my opinion that most of the wheat that's headed out that got heavy snow on it, that has, once the snow thaws, where there's broken stems, that wheat's not going to be able to make grain.
He says over 20 counties throughout the western third of Kansas and over 1.5 million acres are estimated to be impacted.
Certainly doesn't look good for a majority of the wheat in southwest and west central Kansas.
Here's a field from Beaver County, Oklahoma, where this producer says the wheat had 100 bushel per acre potential. But producers in the panhandle of Texas saying temperatures are warming up and snow is melting. But Mother Nature is still leaving a mark on wheat in the area too. This photo showing at least 50% of wheat stems on the ground. Areas to the north seeing its share of a white spring too. In South Dakota, farmers say roughly 3 to 5 inches of snow fell near Sioux Falls Monday morning. Snow traveling to Nebraska, covering this field in Custer County. Farmers here seeing 8 to 10 inches of snow over the last couple of days, with power out in areas. This farmer says quite a few producers are talking about replant.
Wheat wasn't the only thing impacted. We saw reports of lost cattle, power outages, and downed trees. Other crops like corn were just coming out of the ground in many places as well.
The latest crop progress and condition report will not reflect the negative impact on wheat. These results are based on conditions as of last week. Now, Kansas wheat is rated at 49% good to excellent, 90% is jointed, and 44% is headed. 38% of the state's corn is now planted, 12% has emerged. The Corn Belt was not spared from the weekend storms. This eye-in-the-sky footage was taken in Champaign County, Illinois. Operator Jeremy Wolf says many fields in this part of eastern Illinois look like this. As the water recedes, farmers will be able to gauge how much replanting they'll have to do. Likewise, for corn planting and emergence, these numbers reflect last week's activity in Illinois. 63% is planted, 20% has emerged. Iowa farmers saw a 20-point gain in corn planting, but it still remains behind the 5-year average. Missouri, which is dealing with its own flooding problems, has 67% of corn in the ground, 30% has emerged. And flooding has forced the closure of hundreds of Missouri roads. At one point, a 57-mile stretch of Interstate 44 in the south of the state was closed. More than a foot of water fell in parts of the state from Friday through Sunday, causing widespread flooding. The Corn Belt wasn't the only place that saw buckets of water. This comes from the University of Arkansas. According to their extension in Washington County, which is the northwest corner of the state, they got 8.5 inches of rain in just 24 hours. Parts of eastern Oklahoma also got swamped by the weekend rains as well. This is the Illinois River as it runs near the city of Tahlequah. The river crested just shy of its record early Monday morning at just over 29 feet. Many families were forced from their homes. The storm also spawning several tornadoes in East Texas, killing 4 people. The town of Canton seemed to sustain the most damage. The storm cut a path 35 miles long and 15 miles wide.
And then the wind just started, and I saw the roof blow off my house. I have another house in the back that got wiped out immediately.
Elsewhere in ag, demand is strong for pork. According to the latest cold storage report from USDA, frozen pork inventory at the end of March was 10% lower than a year ago, while bone-in ham stocks fell by its biggest amount in at least 20 years. And as Tyne Morgan shows us, that demand now is driving the industry.
Thanks, Clinton. Well, the U.S. pork industry is still in expansion mode, partially enticed by new pork processing plants coming online. Today, we get a behind-the-scenes tour of what could be one of the largest pork processing plants in the country. Located in Coldwater, Michigan, it's creating a big opportunity for producers in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio to expand.
Michigan farmer Brad Blond is in the middle of a major expansion project, laying the foundation for a new opportunity in farming.
This past January, I bought my dad out and decided that we weren't going to own any pigs anymore.
After partnering with his dad for nearly 20 years, it's a decision that didn't happen overnight, selling the 2,000 head of pigs they had left and instead investing in infrastructure.
We had about 3,500 head space before, and we'll have 12,000 head space now.
This big investment will allow Blond to finish out 32,000 head of pigs a year for one producer.
We're actually just a contract grower. We own the buildings. Someone else puts the pigs in. We take care of them for them, and we just get paid on a per head space.
The driving factor of that decision? He's located 15 miles from this.
In the most simplest form, this is a fresh pork processing plant.
This Coldwater, Michigan plant is set to be up and running on September 5th, a plant that Clemens Food Group CEO Doug Clemens says is one of a kind.
Behind you is actually over 650,000 square feet of plant, and this plant was designed to be the most efficient.
Clemens says with a plant of this size, processing capacity will grow over time.
And we expect by February of 2018 to be at full capacity.
With required permits already in hand, Clemens says they'll process 10,000 head a day by February. But it's built to handle a double shift, meaning as many as 22,000 head could go through these doors every day within the next 3 to 5 years.
This was actually a producer vision that kind of brought us together with them to make this plan a reality.
It started with a vision, but the reality is cutting edge.
We tried to incorporate as much technology to make it as fully automated as possible. We spent a lot of time and energy researching what were some of the opportunities we had, not to only make it efficient, but to actually incorporate as many robotics as we could into this plant, and also to make it very food safety friendly.
The majority of this innovation is sourced from Europe.
So this is a water jet cutter.
Clemens says it's the first time the 122-year-old company is using something like this, and the goal is to increase yield from the pork belly. From added efficiency to prioritizing animal welfare.
These hog holding pens are designed to hold about 5,000 head.
Okay.
So it's almost a half a day harvest that we can hold within these pens.
The design inspired by Dr. Temple Grandin and requires an animal to de-stress for at least 2 hours.
45-degree angles were completely eliminated from this design for freer animal flow, in turn higher meat quality, access to water as soon as they come into the hog holding pens.
Clemens says it's better animal handling and care that could ultimately mean better tasting pork in the end.
Now, Clemens Food Group told me the plant is already set up to handle a second shift where they can process up to 22,000 head. All they need to add is additional cooler space. But do we have enough demand to chew through all that pork? I'll answer that question tomorrow on Ag Day. Clinton?
All right, when we come back, we'll look at the cattle markets and why some analysts are urging caution as prices continue to climb. And later, growing a farm 1 meter at a time. See how these Swedish farmers are creating their own careers surrounded by concrete.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight.
farmjournalpro.com.
Brian Splitt with Allendale, our guest here at the Agribusiness Test today. Brian, let's talk about this cattle market because it ended last week pretty much on fire, right? I mean, we're seeing some big moves. Can this hold? What are the warning signs?
So cash market is extremely strong right now. That is driving futures, and futures should meet the cash market at expiration. That's what we've seen the April contract jump several dollars just the past week. But one thing you really have to be mindful of is that the fund position right now is extremely long.
Yeah, we've heard that the funds are...
Open interest in cattle is reaching new record levels. That is great. That's what's helping push the market to where it's going. But there's also the opposite end of that. Now, when you compare open interest in June cattle, that's about 1/4 the size of open interest in July corn. Yet the fund side, the size of the fund position is nearly the same.
Wow.
So corn can handle 100 and 150,000 contracts much better than the cattle market can. So we've got weights low right now. That should be bottoming out in late May, early June. As weights start to increase, the size of the fund position, if they want to get out of this market, that door is not big enough. So things are great right now, and like our other analysts would say, buy puts when you can, not when you have to.
Yeah, right. So as you're watching this, and we've got some people that might be considering ways to protect these prices because these are good prices. Puts, that's kind of the best way to do this. What do you think?
Look, whenever you're trying to talk the risk management process, that conversation has to be done on an individual basis.
Right.
Some producers can handle margin calls. Some producers want to sell a future contract because now it is guaranteed at that price. They know it exactly where it is. Others don't want a margin call, and that in that instance, maybe the put is a better vehicle. It'll provide a worst case scenario. It'll provide a maximum loss in the futures account. So you know if you buy a put for a certain amount, that is the most that you can lose. It'll offer you opportunity to move that floor higher if the futures market does continue to go higher and control that cash outflow to roll your puts up. But again, if the market does tumble, the future contract is going to be a much better vehicle than a put if the market does see a substantial loss. So it's just about managing your own personal risk profile.
Yeah, call somebody, make some inquiries, and maybe see what we can do with this cattle market. What prices are pretty good, right?
That's right.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.
We'll be back with more Agday in just a minute.
To talk to Brian Splitt one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-551-4626 or email him at bsplit@allendale-inc.com. Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
Welcome back to Agday. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, after last week's storms, I think people are ready just for calm.
And we have more of it this week.
Really?
Yeah. Now we do have another storm system diving across the Rockies, but it's not going to be nearly as active as last week. And you can see that's because of a large dome of high pressure that's now settled into much of the southeast, and of course that's drying things out, but also cooling it down. Big storm system still kind of exiting the Great Lakes this morning with some rain and a little bit of snow in the northwest fringe. Most of that rain's already off the east coast and will continue to move that way. Here's that next system. It's not going to be nearly as wet or nearly as strong as the last one, but nonetheless it is moving through the Rockies right now. And you can see as it starts to head into the plains, more rain for central and eastern Kansas into the southern portions of Missouri by tomorrow morning. Weak system diving into the northern plains, causing a little bit of moisture as well. And you can see in the Pacific Northwest another storm system starting to come in that way as we head through the day tomorrow. By late in the afternoon then, thunderstorms firing up again, eastern Texas and Arkansas. Lots of those folks don't need any more of that. And you can see the rain in parts of the central Mississippi Valley. Checking out those rainfall estimates over the past 24 hours, most of it's been along the east coast back to the Appalachians and around the Great Lakes, although that is all moving away. So as we add in the next 36 hours, you can see we don't add too much in the northeast there, but we do start to add some with this moisture in the central and southern plains, with some areas getting 1 to 2 inches again from the southern Missouri Valley into eastern portions of Texas. Snowfall generally in this case confined to the northern Great Lakes, and you can see as we add in the next 36, it's mostly in Canada and also a few of the highest elevations in the central portions of the Rockies. As far as temperatures go, we're looking at 70s and 80s today in the southeast, back into Texas. High temperatures in the 40s and 50s in the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Same idea kind of out in most of the Rockies as well. Low temperatures tonight going to drop into the upper 30s, lower 40s across many parts of the Great Lakes. Some folks going to look for a light frost in some of that area. Could be an issue. And you can see some 50s for lows down into the southeast. Highs tomorrow, warming up again in the southeast, mostly 70s and 80s. And it's starting to warm up again into the western Great Lakes with some upper 50s, close to 60 by afternoon. There's the jet stream, and you can see that storm system, the first one moving away. Second one kind of dives in. This could be another slow mover for the East Coast and cause some issues out that way. But by early next week, kind of a topsy-turvy jet stream there with lots of ups and downs. That's usually a pretty stormy situation again by this weekend and early next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Globe, Arizona, lots of sunshine and warm today, high of 87 degrees. Mason City, Iowa, partly sunny, breezy and cool with a high of 56. And finally, Hampton, Virginia, mostly sunny, comfortably warm this afternoon, high around 80.
Did all of the farmers drop by Grassland Dairy find a home for their milk? We'll have answers next on the Dairy Report. And later, farming today takes lots of land and plenty of horsepower, but these two city dwellers say they plan to farm full-time too. I'll explain.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.
In the Dairy Report, about a month ago, the future looked bleak for nearly 70 dairy farms in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Now, according to our partners over at Milk Magazine, all but a couple have found processors for their milk following a decision by Grassland to reduce supplies after losing export markets in Canada. Officials at the Wisconsin Department of Ag say that roughly 99% of the displaced milk volume has now found a new home. However, a few farmers did retire or sell out in the rush to secure a processor. Governor Scott Walker says they want a strong relationship to continue with Canada, but they think Canada is just plain wrong on this issue. Meanwhile, the global dairy market continues to sag, prices retreating 20% through the first 4 months of this year. Part of the weight lies in supplies, growing U.S. milk production, and excess stocks of products like cheese. The U.S. economy is helping with demand here at home, but globally, economic uncertainty continues to dampen buying. U.S. milk production was up more than 2% in Q1 of this year. Now, in other news, meat companies in Brazil lost the U.S. equivalent of $1.5 billion after the nation's federal police announced an investigation into a tainted meat scandal. The bulk of those losses were attributed to JBS, which lost the U.S. equivalent of $1.4 billion in market share in the month following that investigation. Federal police in Brazil say meat inspectors were bribed to allow tainted meat to pass inspection for export. Brazil's federal police has charged 63 people for participation in the scheme. All right, up next, we'll meet a couple of farmers that don't live in the countryside.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com. Offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search, let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota's BV 4580 round baler. Learn more at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
It may be hard to imagine, but being a farmer may not always be considered a rural job. In Sweden, farmers William and Jonas are busy planting beets. Their goal, not just plant and harvest a small garden, they're trying to forge careers as city-based farmers. They say while growing volume may be more difficult, they are able to cut out the middleman and capture a larger portion of the consumer's food dollar.
It's a serious thing. It's an actual thing. It's an actual job that people can do. If you live in the city and you're interested in growing stuff, you should be able to be a farmer in the city. But it's also very efficient in many ways. You don't need diesel to transport things. You don't need like big storage rooms because you deliver every day and stuff like that. People can come and harvest and go home and make their salad. So it's very efficient in many ways.
The pair plan to offer beans, peas, tomatoes, and salad greens, which are sold to a small number of local restaurants with deliveries twice a week. They're also allowing locals to come and pick their own veggies, paying by the basket. Both work other jobs currently, but say if they can double their urban farm to 500 square meters, they should be able to do it full time. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at Agday, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.